Tonight I'm going to be trying my hand at making homemade flatbread. I'm going to be using a pretty simple recipe. I'm just going to be using flour, salt, olive oil, and some warm water. So I'm going to go ahead and get my stuff together and get ready to get started. Okay, so I'm going to start with 2 cups of an all-purpose flour, and I didn't sift it because the recipe didn't specify. So typically if the recipe doesn't say, then you just leave it as it is. Now you can use a cup of whole wheat flour and a cup of all-purpose flour if you want a little bit more of a nuttier taste, but I'm just going to go ahead and just use the all-purpose flour. Then I want 1 teaspoon of salt, and I'm using a sea salt here. So go ahead and put that in. I'm just going to sort of mix it up a little bit. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use 2 tablespoons of an olive oil. And you want to use a pretty good olive oil because it is for flavoring. And then what I'm going to do is just go ahead and just sort of work it in with my fingers. I'm going to try to make sure I get that incorporated into as much of the flour mixture as possible. It's good flavoring. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use about 3/4 of a cup or so, you kind of judge it as needed, and of hot water, a little at a time. And I'm going to work this into sort of a soft dough that's just maybe a little bit elastic but not quite sticky. So here we go. I'm just gonna, like I said, just going to add a little bit of the hot water at a time. And you can use a spoon for this, but I find that I can get a better maneuvering here with my fingers. I can really, instead of making like a dough ball that sticks to the spoon, I can use my fingers to sort of work in here. I know my bowl's kind of moving a little bit, but what I could have done is sometimes I'll put a silicone mat underneath my bowl and it just keeps it from moving, but I just keep adding a little at a time. I can feel the dough is kind of starting to come together. Now what I have discovered when I've made dough before is there's a real fine point between not enough water and too much. So I usually err on the side of a little less at first until I start seeing how it comes together. You can always add water, but you can't really take it away. Of course, on that note, you can always add flour if you must as well. So it's not quite, it's sort of like a sawdusty sort of consistency. So I'm just going to keep working it. Alright, so I've let this rest under a damp towel instead of putting it into plastic, and that just keeps the top from sort of drying out. So I'm ready to go ahead and begin. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and flour my board. And then I'm going to start kneading my dough. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and roll it into a bar. And then I'm going to cut it into some slices. Put those 2 ends together. All right. Starting with one of my little rolled pieces here. I'm going to start by patting it down. I'm going to make some small ones. And you want these to be pretty thin. If it sticks, just go ahead and get it in some more flour. You can kind of see how thin it is there. You can get it even thinner if you like, but I'm going to go ahead and try it at that. Okay, if you guys have ever seen my videos, you might know I'm not a fan of this stove, but what I'm going to use it for today is I've got a Calphalon chili roaster on here, and it just fits right over the burner. So we are going to see if this will work for the flatbread. And what we're looking for is we're looking for the bread itself to start forming some little bubbles and then puffing up. And then that tells us it's time to go ahead and turn it. So let's see. All right, you can see the bubbles are coming into the bread. It happened pretty quickly. So I just wanted to puff up just a little bit before I flip it over. And the lighter parts you see is where it's kind of cooked, and the darker parts are where it hasn't. So I think I kind of want to make sure it goes up over that. See this darker part here? So hopefully that part will start to puff up. And there it goes. Oh, this works beautifully. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and get that off and get the next one on. This was actually a good experiment. It worked out great. I was able to cook this delicious flatbread here, and it came out really good. It's nice and toasty and warm, and I did taste it, and I'm really pleased. So I hope you guys give this a try. Now in the future, when I make this, this is just plain. You could add a little bit of garlic. You could add some maybe some scallions or whatever you like, and actually flavor this flatbread. But it's definitely a good one. So give it a go.